the Brown Stockings, the Pilgrims, and the Onion Weeders, the birth of baseball in Davenport. Before there were lights along the river, before there was Municipal Stadium, before the Blue Sox, the River Bandits, or John O'Donnell, there were the first baseball teams, and they had names you'd never forget. In 1879, Davenport stepped into something brand new. Professional baseball was still finding its footing, and the idea of minor leagues was just beginning to take shape west of the Mississippi. That summer, a team called the Davenport Brown Stockings took the field and became one of the first organized clubs in the region. The newly formed Northwestern League was small: Dubuque, Omaha, Rockford, Davenport. But it was historic. For the first time, people here could watch real organized baseball. And the players, their names alone sounded like they belonged in a storybook. Joe Blong, Charlie Bone, Art Croft, Rudy Kemmler, Harry McCaffrey, Lynn Stockwell, and one name that would echo far beyond Davenport: Bid McPhee. He was just 19 years old when he played here, a skinny kid trying to make a name for himself. He hit .229 in limited games that year. Nothing spectacular. But he kept going, and years later, Bid McPhee became a Pro Baseball Hall of Famer, one of the earliest major stars to ever wear a Davenport uniform. These weren't rich men, not even close. In the late 1870s and 1880s, most minor league players earned somewhere between $25 and $75 a month. A few of the better ones might make $100. Some were paid per game. Some were given jobs in town to make ends meet. Many lived in boarding houses or shared rented rooms. And when the season ended, they went back to regular work. Factory jobs, river jobs, farm work. Baseball wasn't a career yet. It was a gamble. The Brown Stockings didn't win much. They finished 5-15 and came in fourth. The league folded after one season. But something had started. Baseball had arrived, and the city would never really let it go. For almost a decade after that first experiment, there was silence. No teams, no leagues, just sandlots and local clubs. Then in 1888, the game returned. And this time, Davenport came back with not one team, but several: the Davenport Hawkeyes, the Davenport Pilgrims, and soon after, a team that named itself the Davenport Onion Weeders. It sounded less like a baseball league and more like the cast of a frontier novel. The Hawkeyes were the main club, named for the state itself. They were charter members of the Central Interstate League, part of the earliest organized wave of minor league baseball in the Midwest. And for one brief shining season, they were the best team around. Under manager William Lucas, the Hawkeyes raced out to a 40-18 record and sat in first place when the league suddenly collapsed. No playoffs, no ceremony. But they were champions. The names on that roster feel pulled from a different time. Owen Williams, who led the league in runs scored. Willard Maines, who went 16-4 on the mound. And scattered through the early records and newspapers, the kind of ball player names you just don't hear anymore: Trick McSorley, Hunky Hines, Peck Sharp. They sound more like characters from a riverboat story than professional athletes. Admission to a game in those early years usually cost a dime or a quarter. If there were wooden grandstands, a seat might cost 35 cents. Kids often slipped in for free. Some watched from beyond the outfield fence or from nearby hills. For the price of a drink or a meal, you could spend an afternoon at the ballpark. Crowds weren't massive yet, but they were loud, local, fun. Men in hats, kids chasing foul balls, vendors selling peanuts, players calling out to each other across the field. The game itself looked different, too. Pitchers didn't throw overhand at first. They delivered the ball underhand, almost like tossing a horseshoe. Overhand pitching slowly became common in the 1880s. Gloves were barely gloves at all. Thin leather, sometimes just padding for the palm. Many players still caught barehanded. Catchers didn't wear masks. Chest protectors were rare. Broken fingers were expected. and the rules were still evolving. For a time, it took 9 balls for a walk, then 8, then 7. It wouldn't settle at 4 until later. The strike zone shifted. Foul balls didn't always count as strikes. Some games were called after 7 innings. Some went on endlessly. Baseball was still inventing itself. In 1888, the city even briefly hosted another team midseason when the Minneapolis club relocated. They became the Davenport Onion Weeders. It's one of the most wonderfully strange team names in baseball history. The Onion Weeders. No one knows exactly why they were called that. Maybe it was a joke, maybe it was local pride, whatever the reason, it's been lost to time. But for a few months, Davenport had a team with that name playing professional baseball along the Mississippi. The Hawkeyes came back in 1889, still competitive, still drawing crowds. But like many early teams, they were fragile. Leagues formed quickly and disappeared just as fast. Schedules collapsed. Teams relocated. Money ran out. Players sometimes went unpaid for weeks. And by September, the Hawkeyes folded. 2 years later, another Davenport club appeared. The Pilgrims. They didn't last long either. But one moment from that final early era stands out. A pitcher named George Nicol. In 1891, he dominated hitters here, finishing with a 15-8 record and a 1.36 ERA. Fans packed in to watch him throw. One Sunday, 2,000 people showed up just to see him pitch. That was a huge crowd for the time. After that game, a major league team bought his contract on the spot. Just like that, he was gone. And a few days later, the team folded. That was baseball in the 1800s. Unstable, temporary, always changing. But it was alive. Other towns were forming teams too. Dubuque Red Stockings, Omaha Green Stockings, Rockford White Stockings. Everywhere you looked, the names were colorful, personal, local. They reflected the people, the industries, the neighborhoods, the pride. No mascots, no branding teams, just communities putting a name on a jersey and taking the field. And yet, from those fragile beginnings came something lasting. More teams followed in the years ahead. River Rats, Knickerbockers, Prodigals. Rock Island fielded clubs, including one called the Islanders. Moline eventually joined in. By the early 1900s, the Quad Cities had become one of the Midwest's steady baseball homes. But it all started with those first few teams in the 1870s and 1880s. Men earning a few dollars a week, riding trains from town to town, playing for crowds who paid a dime to watch them. Men with names like Bid McPhee, Joe Blong, and Harry McCaffrey playing ball on rough fields on the west side of Davenport. Sunday games on Sullivan Island. Crowds gathering along the river to watch something new unfold. They couldn't have known what they were starting. They didn't know stadiums would rise, or that thousands would one day pack the stands, or that generations would grow up with baseball as part of life along the Mississippi. They were just playing. But those early teams, the Brown Stockings, the Hawkeyes, the Onion Weeders, laid the foundation for everything that came after. Every team, every season, every summer night at the ballpark. It all traces back to those first strange names, those first rough rosters, and those first brave attempts to bring professional baseball to a river town. And somehow, it stuck around.